Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So what if I told you that deciding to buy a gold necklace for a family wedding, or, even just cooking with a little less oil tonight, is actually directly linked to the stability of the global economy? Sounds crazy, right? Well, today we are pulling back the curtain on this totally invisible thread connecting your everyday daily habits to massive national reserves. It is absolutely a classic case of tiny micro actions having massive macro consequences.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The whole catalyst for our explainer today is this pretty striking quote. During a public address in Hyderabad back in May 2026, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made this unprecedented moral appeal to the citizens of India. He asked them to completely stop buying physical gold jewelry for an entire year. Yep, even for weddings. But why? What's the connection? Well, to understand how skipping a trip to the jeweler actually shields the economy from things like Middle Eastern geopolitical tensions, we really need to unpack the underlying economics.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the surprising appeal, go through the 7 steps to save dollars, crunch the foreign exchange math, look at the domino effect, see how it impacts the cost of daily goods, and finally, weigh tradition versus economics.
Let's start with Section 1, the surprising appeal. A call for austerity.
Moving right along to Section 2, 7 steps to save dollars, changing daily habits.
All right, so what exactly is being asked of people to help shield the economy? It actually breaks down into 7 very specific, everyday lifestyle changes, all designed to keep US dollars inside the country. First up, like we mentioned, pausing gold purchases for a whole year. Second is conserving fuel. So instead of driving your car to work alone every day, the appeal suggests setting up a carpool with a neighbor, maybe hopping on the metro, or making the switch to an electric vehicle. Third, and this is a highly specific request for the kitchen, reducing edible oil consumption by just 10%. Just think of it as using 1 less spoonful of oil when you're cooking dinner. And fourth, holding off on those foreign trips. Instead of planning a lavish destination wedding in Bali or a big summer vacation in Europe, the appeal is asking citizens to keep that massive tourism spending strictly domestic for the next 12 months.
Now for the final 3 appeals. Number 5 is a big push for farmers to cut chemical fertilizer usage by 25 to 50%. The idea is to adopt natural farming, so the nation just relies way less on expensive imported chemicals. Sixth is a renewed push for vocal for local, and this means literally looking around your home, checking your bathroom cabinet right now. Are your combs, toothbrushes, or soaps made by foreign brands? The goal here is to identify those specific items and actively replace them with local, Indian-made alternatives moving forward. Finally, the 7th appeal is to bring back that COVID-era prioritization of virtual work and online meetings. Instead of flying all the way across the country for a 1-hour client meeting, just jump on a video call. It saves a ton of aviation fuel.
Now, obviously, the tradition of buying physical gold is deeply, deeply entrenched, especially when it comes to weddings. To respect that cultural aspect while still saving dollars, the government is actively encouraging a shift toward digital or paper gold alternatives. We're talking things like sovereign gold bonds, gold ETFs, or digital gold. And honestly, the logic here is brilliant. Because these alternatives don't require importing physical bullion from abroad, they prevent those precious US dollars from leaking out of the country. You still get the exact same financial security of investing in gold, but the national treasury gets to keep its cash. It's a win-win.
Which brings us to Section 3, the foreign exchange math, the macro drain.
Now what's really interesting here is this number, 85%. I really want that to sink in for a second. That is the massive percentage of crude oil India has to import from other countries just to meet its basic baseline energy needs. And here's the catch. International crude oil is traded exclusively in US dollars. So every single time geopolitical tensions flare up in places like the Middle East and global oil prices suddenly spike, India is essentially forced to bleed significantly more dollars just to keep the lights on and keep cars running.
And then, of course, there's the gold. India imports an astronomical 700 to 800 tons of gold annually. That's a staggering amount. And incredibly, roughly 50% of this imported gold is literally swallowed up by the 1 crore plus weddings taking place in the country every single year. So when citizens buy a physical gold necklace for a family function, the country is essentially paying for it by packing up actual US dollars and sending them overseas. It's a huge direct drain on national resources, all for personal consumption.
And you can see the very real, very rapid impact of this dollar drain right here. Take a look at these dates. Before recent Middle East conflicts really escalated, India's foreign exchange reserves had hit a record high, nearly $728.5 billion in late February of 2026. But by May 1st, just a few short months later, those reserves had plummeted to about $690.7 billion. That massive drop happens because those imports are getting increasingly expensive, and the Reserve Bank of India literally has to spend its stored dollars to step in, stabilize the market, and prop up our currency.
Okay, on to Section 4, the domino effect. Weak rupee, high inflation.
So the crucial point we need to understand is this totally invisible chain reaction, which shows exactly how global crises directly assault your local wallet. Let's break it down. Step 1. India spends vast amounts of dollars importing increasingly expensive oil, gold, and fertilizers. Step 2. Because all those dollars are leaving the country at such a rapid pace, the national foreign exchange reserves drop. Step 3. With a lower supply of dollars circulating, the Indian rupee weakens in value against the dollar. Step 4. Because the rupee is weaker, literally everything else the country imports suddenly costs much, much more. And that drives up inflation across the entire board. It's exactly like falling dominoes.
And that leads us to Section 5, the cost of daily goods, hitting the kitchen.
And this brilliantly illustrates how all that macroeconomic inflation we just mapped out doesn't just, stay in the financial papers, it lands right on your kitchen table. Fast-moving consumer goods companies, the ones making your daily essentials, are feeling the intense squeeze of this weakened rupee and those higher fuel costs. To survive, they're forced to raise prices on everyday stuff like soap, detergents, and biscuits by 3 to 5%. Or they do something a bit sneakier, a strategy known as shrinkflation. This is where they keep the price at, say, 10 rupees, but quietly slip fewer biscuits into a slightly smaller packet.
But the energy sector? That is taking an even more direct, alarming hit. Domestic oil marketing companies have been losing an estimated 1,600 to 1,700 crore rupees every single day. Why? Because they've been absorbing the high global crude costs instead of passing them directly onto consumers. But the reality is, they just can't do that forever. To recover from these massive deficits, consumers could soon see a really steep jump at the pump. We're talking petrol potentially rising by 18 rupees, diesel by 35, and a domestic LPG cylinder jumping by 40 to 50 rupees.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, tradition versus economics, the final choice.
So, we've traced this entire domino effect, from a geopolitical conflict thousands of miles away, all the way down to the shrinking size of a biscuit packet in your pantry. And we've walked through the 7 specific appeals meant to stop that massive dollar drain, which really leaves us with a profound question to chew on. Can deeply rooted tradition truly take a back seat to national economics? Will families actually forego buying physical gold for a daughter's wedding, or completely cancel an international trip simply to help preserve the country's foreign exchange reserves? It is an absolutely fascinating clash between cultural expectations and macroeconomic survival. Really think about it. What choice would you make? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.